Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Today I have the opportunity to work on a Shimano, a little bit different than one of the ones I previewed a little bit a while ago. This is the Shimano Sahara 4000 FE. We were working not too long ago on the Sedona. They're similar in styles and reels. I like them a lot. If you were to ask me to pick a 4000 reel, I think that the Shimanos would be right in there with any of them. And they're well designed and they're relatively affordable as opposed to some of the reels that are out there. Well, this one's got braid on it. They have a nice little Velcro kind of a strap on it to hold it in. And what we're going to do is we're going to take this reel apart. We'll show you how it's made, how to service it, and how to keep it fishing for a long time to come. Well, while I take off the exterior parts, I want to encourage you to subscribe to my channel. And if you do subscribe to my channel, please use the notification button to let you know when I'm posting. You'll not only see the reels like this, where you learn how to service them and repair them, well, you'll also see that I'm posting YouTube shorts these days, fishing reels of the day. And I'm trying to give you a little bit of an education about the reel itself, its use, and how those reels have developed over time. Well, the Sahara is the 4000. That's good for lake, river, inshore, ocean, and with braid, which I have on this reel, well, you can go a little bit more offshore, depending on the braid that you load in there. Well, we've taken the spool off. You do that by removing that drag adjuster knob, and now we're going to take the handle off, and the handle is held in place by this side plate screw. So you need to remove that, and to remove that you do that in a counterclockwise manner. That means turning the reel or the nut towards you. All right, well, that comes off. There's a little block. You may see it on here. I'll try and tighten it up a little bit. That little block there is going to lodge inside the square of the main gear, so don't lose that block. When you look at this reel, you're going to notice that the side plate, it's actually on this side, is underneath the rotor. So in order to remove that side plate, you have to remove the rotor first. We'll take the handle out, and one of the good things to do when you take that handle out is just put the handle screw right back into it. It's harder to lose it that way. And I use a parts tray. I use the bottom of a fast food container to hold the pieces and parts that I take off, so that I know where they are when I go to reinstall them on the reel. To get that rotor off, there's a click ratchet and there's a couple of shim washers on here. Those shim washers are intended to change the spool height so that you can get an even wrap. Okay, the next thing up then, after you've removed those washers, is to remove the nut that's holding, or the screw rather, that's holding that rotor nut in place. That's a small screw. This is a good place to tell you to take pictures along the way. If you find that you're not trusting your memory as much, or if you need to leave a project, then those pictures are going to be a great place to go for reference. Well, this is a 12mm nut, and it comes off again in a clockwise manner. Sometimes you're going to find that those nuts do not come off clockwise, but are rather reverse threaded, and if that's the case, you need to make a note. You'll know that it doesn't come off if you try to take it by turning it clockwise and it's tightening. All right, this should be able to just lift this up now. And underneath we have an old school anti-reverse clutch. One of the advantages of this old school clutch is that you can have an anti-reverse override. You're going to notice that there's 3 silver screws and 2 black screws. The black screws are holding on the lid for that anti-reverse clutch. Don't take them off. What you will find if you take them off is that you're going to put yourself at risk. The roller bearings may come out, and well, if they come out and start bouncing all over the place, you'll have a clutch that doesn't work. And some of these clutches are getting increasingly hard to find as replacement parts. So I would tell you, do not attempt to take that off, and if you do attempt to take that off, make sure that you take pictures and that you are aware of what you are doing there. We can remove this now. Underneath here, you're going to see that there's that a little indentation here. This is how the override works. And when you go to reinstall, this needs to be aligned with the stud on that little lever that controls the override. Another frequent problem that, well, not problem, but challenge that folks have is that the collar that traps the, or makes that clutch ride is not a flat collar. There's a wider section and a narrower section. And when you go to reinstall, that wider section goes up top. If you put it on backwards, it will not work. All right, the rest of this is the pinion gear assembly. Now you can see one of the bearings that's in there. And that gives us access now to go ahead and remove the case. First thing we're going to do is take the 2 screws off of the trim ring here. I'm not sure if there's another screw underneath. That's why we're going to start here. And when I take these screws off, I like to put them on my table momentarily to make sure that all of these screws are the same length. Shimano, for one reason or another, is notorious for having different length screws in the cases. So just be aware of that as you go. There you go. There's a small screw below here. Looks like we have 2 small screws and a big screw. We do. So the 2 small screws go here. The long screw goes under the cavity there. Make a note of that so that when you go to reinstall, you don't put them in the wrong places. I've had folks bring reels in and say, I put it back together, I can't get this screw all the way in, can you help me? Well, the issue was really that the screw was in the wrong hole. Don't think that the case will come off now, it won't. We have one more screw up top here. So let's go ahead and get that one out. And that's a very small screw. I'm going to keep that with the side plate screws because that way I will be able to make certain that I go and don't swap screws with, like, for example, the screw that was holding the rotor nut on. We should be able to remove the side plate now. And depending on when it was last serviced, it may be easier than others. Sometimes there's a lot of grease and the like that kind of harbor in there. We have a bearing and a shim washer here. When I tested the reel before I started the video, the bearings were all running fine, so I'm just going to oil those bearings. I oil bearings. I choose to oil them rather than to put grease on them. It says it's a 4-ball bearing reel. I'm just working to get that little shim washer out of there at the moment. Probably should have taken it off before I oiled it. That shim washer belongs on the main gear here. Those shim washers are used to control the in and out movement of the main gear, take up any slack that there may be in the build, so just be aware of that. Okay, we can rotate this down so that we can get to the crosswind block, because there's going to be a screw on there, and in order to service the reel, that screw has got to come out so that we can remove the upper end of the parts and the axle shaft. Again, take pictures. This is a good place. You don't have to take videos. I take videos as my picture form. But if you're going to use your cell phone camera or standing digital camera or anything like that, the pictures will be a great assist if you get stuck putting it back along the way. Oh, how can you get stuck? Well, this is an example of how you might get stuck. This is not a symmetrical crosswind block. It has a high point, and that high point faces up. So sometimes it's a little easier and more difficult to see. Just be aware that those differences exist. But we should be able to remove. There's a little shield here. I'm going to try and remove that first. Oh, we have another little screw in here. Of course we do. It's Shimano. There's a shield that goes on the top of that main gear. Right here. It's the screw that needs to be removed before we can remove that. Don't try to do anything radical like pull. I'm just seeing this is a clip as well. There's a vibration clip that goes on here. It's a water seal and vibration clip. one's pressed in pretty good. All right, that comes off and this comes off. I'm just going to leave those on my table. Now we can take that main gear off. Just like that. We can see that we have a bunch of old dried grease. On the back end we have a bushing, not a bearing, which is interesting because this reel says 4 ball bearings. I'm not quite sure where they go. So we've just removed the crosswind gear, the crosswind block, and now we can take out the pinion gear and the bearing up top. So we've got 2 of the 4 bearings identified. We have the bearing here and the bearing on the drive side. I'm thinking there's a bearing in the handle and there's probably a roll of bearing on the bail. So don't assume everything is inside the reel. That's not necessarily the case. I just had one that came in. It was an Okuma reel, 16 ball bearings. Well, I often get asked how many ball bearings is enough. Well, I think 16 is probably too many. I always, when I do those Okuma reels, I think that somebody had an in with the bearing manufacturer somewhere. Alright, well, that wasn't too hard to clean up. I just used a spray of penetrating oil and a Q-tip. That seems to have gotten the dirt and the like out of it. There's more to be had. There's some on the back of the main gear here, so we'll clean that up. And while you're doing this, you're checking for any potential damage that may be out there. Boy, that's a healthy dose of grease there. You want to check the teeth to make sure that they're all uniform and they're clear and clean, and that they're not chipped or cracked. Do it from both sides. Check the face side and then check this side, the points. Every now and then you're going to find that there was a gear that got warped, and even though the teeth looked good from the one side, they were worn in and out. Now I'm going to use a brush. You can use a toothbrush. I'm using a hard brush here to clean out that old grease from the channels. Inspect the back end as well. Look at all the teeth on that gear that's going to drive the crosswind block. The crosswind gear that drives the crosswind block. All right, check the same thing here. This one's completely clean. It's thrown all the grease off. And again, you're just checking to make sure that they're all even and not cracked. This is just that's not corrosion, it's just some tarnish. Can't do anything about that. Clean the crosswind block up and we can pretty much start reassembly. All right, very good. That's all done. One more thing we'll do, since we have all these pieces and parts out. I'm going to do the same thing here. We'll take that bearing off and oil that. Please use fishing reel oils and greases. Don't substitute household oils and automotive greases and the like. Use the ones that are designed for marine environments and for fishing reel equipment, fishing equipment in general, reels in particular. I think you'll be happier with that. Some of the stuff that I've seen evaporates too quickly or turns to sludge or just kind of gets thrown off to the side, and well, you're wasting a lot of time, not to mention greases trying to substitute something. They're not expensive. You can get the greases and the oils online pretty cheap through a variety of vendors. All right, this is your pinion gear assembly. Here's a quick note. If you've taken that bushing out of the side, or if that bushing has fallen off of the side, you're going to see 2 arrows here. When that bushing is out of the case, there's 2 holes in the side case here, and there's 2 corresponding studs underneath here that need to be seated properly so that this bushing is flush against the case. If you find that you're not in those recesses, what's going to happen is this is going to ride high and your reel is not going to work properly. Let's take that crosswind gear. This is one that gets grease everywhere. It gets it on the back because it's going to ride along there. Gets it on the face because the crosswind block is going to ride on that. And it gets it in the teeth because the teeth are going to intersect with the drive on the back of the main gear. When you put that in, just load it in and make sure that you load the stud to the bottom of the case. That way you're going to have the clearance for this crosswind block screw. You can put the block in next. Make sure you get some grease into the cavity where that stud is going to ride, and on the face here that's going to ride up it. You don't need to put any grease on the outside of this. It doesn't interlace or interface with anything. You're just wasting grease if you're doing that. Some people tell me, oh, I put grease on there so it doesn't rust. Well, if you're getting water and contaminants inside your reel body, you probably got a bigger issue than whether it's going to rust. Maybe you could have prevented the tarnish on that one, but that's to be seen. Let's take this and put that in first. We're going to seat that here. Push down so that this is flush. No maintenance is required on the anti-reverse clutch unless it's not working. This one is clean, and that's the way it should be. It shouldn't be greased. Remember what I said, the wide side faces up. Seat it so that it's completely on top of the bearing there. And then let's take the case, look for the part that has the hole where the stud is going to line, and go ahead and bring it in visually so that you can see it going into that slot. And if it's not going to the slot, just trip the lever like I did. Remember when we were taking the case off, we tripped that lever. Well, you need to put that back. If you can't remember what holes these go in, take a look. You're going to find the post going all the way through. There's a lot of holes here. I don't know if this design was used in multiple reels with different hole locations. I would think that it is. I've seen this piece around an awful lot on a lot of different Shimano reels. So it is quite possible that different holes line up with different pieces. In this case, we've got the 3. Okay, that's all in. Let's go put our main gear in then. That goes next. We want to get a little bit of grease onto the drive on the back side for the crosswind gear, even though we put the grease on the other one. And we want to make sure that we are setting that properly here. Just like that. With that crosswind block down, we can install the axle shaft, make sure that that is clean. So much of your servicing of the reel is about cleaning and keeping it debris free as you go to reinstall. Well, I want to encourage you, if you like this type of video, to subscribe to my channel. I think I may have done that already. And to ask questions. Questions are a great way to understand the art of the reel repair. Maybe you're working on a reel and you're stuck, and we'll ask the question, and maybe I can try and get you unstuck. The best way to do that is to leave it in the comment section of the video. It doesn't have to be on this reel. Maybe you're working, let's say, on a classic reel like a Mitchell 300, and something just isn't working properly, or you can't get the synchronization correct in the oscillation gears. We'll just leave it in that section. I'll try and answer that for you. All right, once you put that main gear back in, now it's time to go ahead and put the shroud back on. You're going to notice on this, yeah, I guess you could put this on upside down. There's a little point here, stud. There's a little hole right here. That's where the two merge. So go ahead and grab that, put that back up. And then we have this little anti-vibration ring, and I recall that the screw that I left in belongs on this side. So we're going to just kind of roll that over and reseat this. We're going to need a micro driver for this in all probability. That's what I used to take this one out. That's good on that side. And of course we did the same over here, so we have to set this in. Get that aligned in there, and then we have that little screw that's going to go in there. So you can see that there's a variety of tools that are needed here. Just be careful as you go ahead and do these installs to use the right tool. Make sure that it's aligned up properly with the slots in the screws. You don't want to use one that's too small and risk butterflying it. All right, we can put the bottom on then. It's got to go on square. You've got a couple of things you're lining up here. This little cap on the bottom has got to go to the outside there. And there you go. We have the 3 screws now. Do you remember which ones went where? We had the long one that went here. The 2 short ones went to the outside and the bottom. I guess that's the inside of it, but I guess it depends on what you want to call the outside. It goes to the rear where the arm is for the attachment to the pole. This short one goes here. So you're going to find that even though there's a lot of model names with the Shimanos for the mid-size series here, like I said, we've seen the Sedona, is the Sahara, there's an Aero. Some of them, they're all going to serve the same purpose in terms of the fish that you are pursuing, but some of them will have a worm drive as opposed to the drive we saw here, which is the more traditional crosswind block drive. Let's take our rotor. It's clean underneath. Go ahead and install that. While we do that, it doesn't hurt to put oil onto the seams where the bail arms meet. And of course we have a burring under here, so you can go ahead and put some oil there. You do not need to remove the bail arms and take all the springs out and that to check. If your bail is working, that's one of the ones I advise to leave alone. Simply go ahead and do what we just did here, which was to put a little bit of oil on there. All right, we want to tighten this up then. We noted when we took this off that it is a traditional righty-tighty, lefty-loosey kind of a setup. Tighten it snug, give it a turn, make sure that it turns nicely, which it does. Then go ahead, there's one more screw in my basket here, and I know where that belongs. That's the tie-down screw for that rotor nut. And just finish tightening it up after you got it started. All right, we have our handle goes next. Remember what I said, don't lose that little white plastic block there. That'll hold the screw firm to the main gear. Let's go ahead and put that on. Then we'll come up top, we'll take a look at the spool. Make sure that the drags are serviced. And we'll give it a test. All right, to service the drags then, we have the adjuster. Then we have a 5-sided tension spring. Hold your finger on that spring as you go to remove it. This spring is, well, it's just that. It's a spring. It's a retaining clip. And it can certainly shoot. That's what springs do. And they can cause problems. Let's see what we have in here. We usually have felt washers in here. And we have felt washers in here. Remove the drag stack. Take a clean cloth. Clean out the interior. If you have dirt and debris in there, well, that's just going to get on the drags and it's going to act like an abrasive. And it will lead to premature wear. First drag washer goes in. These are felt. They get oiled. Some amount of oil in that bottle. And you can give it a healthy coat of the oil. This is a traditional 6 drag washer system. Some folks will put lightweight grease on here. You can do that. I tend to oil them, but you could use light grease. You want to keep these lubricated so that they don't tear and dry out. All right, the first one is a round washer with the rectangular center. That's called a keyed washer. That goes in after the first drag washer. Now we're going to put the second felt washer in. We're going to repeat with the oiling. Wipe this keyed washer off now, or the eared washer rather. The eared washer has the 2 points on it. They fit in the slots in the spool. That's always the middle washer on a 6 drag system. Last of the felt washers. Keep that nice and oiled. Then we want to put the last of the keyed washers in. That's the round one with the rectangular center. Get your retaining clip. Find the slots in the spool and bring that up. So every now and then I get the question, I didn't listen to you, I forgot to hold the spring, it's shot, I can't find it. What happens if I put the spool back on without it? Nothing happens. All you risk is that that drag stack is going to fall out. All right, I almost made a mistake there. There is a click ratchet that goes on next. That click ratchet is going to make noise. You can see the little click tongue back here. And when this spins backwards, it's going to make a click-click noise to let you know that your drag is going out. And we have the spool shims. We were talking about that before. Shimano generally provides 3 spool shim washers. And if you're not getting an even line light, try reducing or increasing, depending on how the line is laying. So for example, if all of your line is gathering to the bottom, that means that the spool is not coming down enough. You would have to remove a washer. If it's gathering all the way up top and not reaching the bottom, so it's a reverse cone, if you will, like a cyclone, then you want to add a washer to raise the spool so that the line can continue to gather below. All right, I put the drag washer's adjusting knob on. I'm going to test it to make sure it's tight, and then we're going to back it off. You don't want to put pressure on there. Pressure on there acts like a wood turner's vise. It's just going to squeeze all that oil out, and well, then all that you did was for naught. All right, let's give it a ride. Nice and smooth, right? Very nice. All right, test the bail. It fires nicely. And that's it. That's your Shimano Sahara 4000. This one is the FB model. And this one's ready to go fishing again. So I hope you've enjoyed that. If you did, please like it. And again, please subscribe if you'd like to see more of these. Please pay attention to my shorts. I'm trying to do one every day where I feature a reel and tell a little story about them. And I think you will enjoy them. To our first responders and essential personnel, thank you for everything it is that you do to keep us safe. Your efforts truly are appreciated. To everyone, please have a great day fishing. Have a wonderful time out there. And please stay watching. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle.